So last year, Taylor's University Book Club invited me to speak at their Dungeons and Dragons event, and I decided to speak on promoting critical thinking and intellectual curiosity through Dungeons and Dragons. I unfortunately didn't video my talk, but I have the audio and the PowerPoint, and I'm going to combine those here for your viewing pleasure.
Firstly, I have to thank Brandon and Ashley, who I hear is in Australia, for bringing us all together. I think the D&D community, I was just saying to some of the other DMs, that I think D&D is about to explode in Malaysia, as it has done in America for the last, I think, 5 years. You've just seen an almost exponential growth due to things like Critical Role and Stranger Things and Big Bang Theory. Anyway, let me introduce myself. My name's Sam Chung. Should be a presentation coming up. I have to apologize to Bowie. I am a maths teacher, and as I see people with their eyes glazing over, I hope that doesn't put you off. And I hope that I can be a little bit different from some of your maths teachers who might have made you fall asleep. I have taken on the rather pretentious, and I'm slightly embarrassed about it, the title, the Educational Dungeon Master, the Educational DM, not because I think I'm a huge authority about it, it's just because I love to talk about it. My dad bought me a box set in the mid-80s from a car boot sale, second-hand box set of Dungeons & Dragons, gave it to me, and from there I was just absolutely hooked. I've been a maths teacher for about 20 years, so a few years ago I started running, previous to that I was running board games clubs in school, and I was loving the educational aspects of those. But then a number of years ago I started running Dungeons & Dragons in school, and now I just can't stop raving about the educational value of Dungeons & Dragons. So much so, in fact, that I started a blog. Brandon, can you, next slide. It's just a little bit of a selfless kind of self-promotion there. You can see I've only written 3 articles so far. I'm taking my time to craft them, but you can actually see a little bit more on my Facebook page and Twitter. But talk to me and you'll find that I can't stop talking about how amazing Dungeons & Dragons is for educational things. So, as a teacher, I tend to my eye tends to catch on educational websites or news articles that come up. And at least once or twice a year, I see this kind of news article. Next slide, please, Brandon. What skills do companies most look for in their employees? Or what do companies most look for in interviews? Or what is it that schools don't teach but should teach? You probably know the ones, especially if you're at university, looking for jobs, because these are the important ones. And as a teacher, I'm thinking, yes, there's a bit of a problem with education, but we need to solve it. And when I started running Dungeons & Dragons in school, I started seeing these being solved in my Dungeons & Dragons group. In fact, almost all of the skills that you could learn there were found, practiced, and encouraged by playing Dungeons & Dragons. So if you've got interpersonal skills, tick, it's there. Resilience, yes. Taking initiative, yes. Teamwork, communication, creativity. The list could go on, and I could go on about it, but you don't want to hear me going on about it too much. So I've picked 2 of what I think are the most important ones: critical thinking and intellectual curiosity. And I think we're going to talk about that as well, about what those mean. Critical thinking encapsulates a lot of what you might think of as innovation or problem solving or using common sense or using reasoning. Whenever they talk about being lifelong learners or being teachable or being self-motivated or showing interest or passion, then they're talking about intellectual curiosity. So obviously these, they might not contain exactly those words, critical thinking or intellectual curiosity, but a lot of those skills are covered by these 2 main things. So let's start with critical thinking, which I think is the slightly easier one. Here it's defined in Wikipedia. The subject is complex and has several different definitions exist. So basically, Wikipedia doesn't even know how to define critical thinking. It's one of those buzzwords that is thrown around education as this, yes, we must do it. But nobody really has a full idea of what it means. Okay? If they're throwing that buzzword at you, put them on the spot and say, what do you think that means? Well, for me, it means to solve problems, especially real-world ones, things that you've never seen before, and in essence, as I said before, it encapsulates problem-solving, innovating, thinking laterally, and applying your skills and knowledge to the real world. The problem I face in my maths classrooms is how do I bring that into my maths classrooms? How do I educate students to think critically? Well, there's a couple of things I do. There's one thing is just to throw problems at my students they've never seen before. They don't have the tools for. And some of you are horrified by that thought. Not knowing should not be a panic, should not cause panic. Because in the real world, you will come across things that you won't know. And the internet and Google might not be able to tell you. So what are you going to do? How are you going to solve them? Well, you try and think. You use the problem-solving skills that you've been taught. What if you've never been taught them? Well, this is what we're trying to do. And in D&D, we see these things. You come across a creature that freezes you, paralyzes you, as you look at it. All of you who are familiar with mythology know that's the Medusa, but what do you do if you're not prepared for it? If you haven't got a mirror like Perseus had, what do? You have to do what is called critical thinking. You have to come up with the solution. 2 years ago, I was DMing some students in an adventure. Some of you who know Adventurous League might recognize it. There's a huge amount of boulders falsely created, and the party has to somehow climb it. Their goal is at the top. I asked them what they wanted to do. They said, oh yeah, we're just going to climb it. So they rolled an athletics check to see whether they could climb it. The wizard, who wasn't very strong, fell down, hurt himself. I said to the rest, what are you going to do? Oh, we're going to just go and wait for him. Okay, so he climbed back up. He managed to succeed this first climb. Then we did it again to get to the top. And surprise, surprise, the wizard fell down all the way to the bottom and was bleeding out at the bottom. So now I'm asking my party, time is of the essence. Your wizard is bleeding out the bottom. He's dying. What are you doing? They're thinking to themselves, in real life, obviously, you don't have this time. But the party did have this time, so they were thinking, what should we do? Eventually, one of the more experienced players said, I'm going to get my rope out, I'm going to tie it off, and I'm going to climb down. And with a healing potion, he managed to do it, and everything was fine. But what amazed me was not that they didn't know how to solve, well, not that they didn't know how to solve it, it just took them so long to figure it out, and they weren't really thinking about it. In that group were 3 of the brightest mathematicians in my school, from 3 different years, as well as one of the top debaters, and he does Model United Nations as well. And I asked them afterwards, what could have... Sorry?
Did any of them ask how many XP was the wizard?
No, thankfully not. Thankfully not. But I asked them afterwards, what could you have done better? And straight away they said, oh, we could have tied the rope off and we could have climbed up or first, you know. Then I said, what else could you have done? Silence. No thoughts. They looked at it, I said, look in your backpacks. Look on your character sheet. Ah, grappling hooks. It's like we just thought that they were there for flavor. Okay. And then I said, what else could you have done? They were getting into it now, and they were saying, yeah, we could have sent the best climber up first. Yeah? I really hope that when they get into the real world, they don't solve problems like this. We're just going to do it. Yeah, we're not going to think about it. They actually plan ahead and think ahead of how they might solve problems. Now, I know that, so here's another scenario for you. Brandon, slide please. Okay, that one. Okay, sorry those who are scared of spiders, look away now. This is from a 4th edition adventure called The Dark Legacy of Ivard. This actually resulted in a total party kill, TPK we call it, because they didn't think it through. So you're approaching from the right-hand side. This is an armory which you've got to get to pick up some weapons to equip the guard. You'll see on the next slide, yes, we've got some leeching shadows around the front. We've got some spider swarms in front of the armory, and on top of the armory, on the roof, is a death jump spider, a massive spider. Now, I want you, this is where you're going to have to think about it. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to think about some strategies to do. Okay, by the way, there's a canal here. The canal is about 4 foot deep. Okay, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to think about it, then a minute to talk to the person next to you, be friendly, about what your strategies are. Go. Wait, no, you're not allowed. You're a DM. You're not allowed. You're the one coming up with the problem. Okay, 30 seconds to think about it. Now, talk to your friends about the strategy. Talk to the people next to you about the strategies. If you haven't got a friend next to you, find somebody. Okay, about the strategies you might use to...
Just a question, Sam. Did this start with F and end with O?
They're not high enough level. This is level 1. Get to the armory from the right-hand side. We'll start area. Get to this building. Just imagine you are there, you're adventurers, and you're trying to get into the building. These things are trying to stop you. There's a leeching shadow. Leeching shadows are elves. The S is the spider swarm, a massive swarm of spiders. And on top is a massive giant spider about the size of a man, which kind of is a giant, well, yeah. Yeah. Just, you've got a mission. Imagine you're kind of like a warrior or a magic user of some sort. Brandon, can you go back to the previous? Brandon, can you go back to the previous slide? Yeah, thank you. Okay, you'll find. Just wait. I'm glad you're keen, but just wait. We don't want to spoil it for everyone else. The big spider won't attack you until you reach a certain close proximity to the spider. That's one more thing. In fact, none of them will attack you until you reach a certain proximity to them. Okay, let's have some solutions. Okay, firstly, let's just get some hands up if you came up with these solutions. Firstly, who came up with the idea that you would use the bridges as bottlenecks? Stick your hand up. The bridges as bottlenecks. So you don't prevent them all from coming at you at the same time. Okay, so my party came up with that. They defeated the leeching shadows because they all came to them and they had to cross the bridge and they could only go at 2 at a time. Okay, so that's a good idea. Stick up your hands if you thought that you would deal with all of the other things, enemies first before dealing with the big spider. One by one. Good, some of you thought of that. My players did not think of that. The rogue, while the rest of them were joining in with the spider swarm, the rogue decided to climb the armory by himself and take on the giant spider. Yeah. See, the giant spider wasn't included. It wasn't attacking them. Why would you go and attack something that's not attacking you? Okay? You deal with it. You deal with it later. Okay? Yes, he wants XP. Okay, right. Those of you knew what's going on. Put up your hand. Put up your hand if you're thinking about like fire weapons for spiders. Yep. AD said fireball, but they're first level, so they don't have fireballs. Okay. The other mistake that my group made, there were 9 of them in that group. That was quite a difficult group to manage, but there were 9. They decided because they were so large, they would split the party. Never split the party. Okay. The only one that had fire area weapons, that was the Dragonborn who could breathe fire. once a day, decided to go with the other group. So this group had no area weapons or fire weapons. So they had to bring out a torch to attack the spiders. Put up your hand if you thought of standing in the canal to stop the spiders attacking you. Ooh, no one thought of that. Oh, we had some people think. Yeah, I said use the canal to stand in. I said it was 4 foot deep, okay, to stop the spiders attacking you. They're spiders. If you stand in the water, you came up with that. That's brilliant. Okay, this is a canal. It's water. You stand in it. You stop the spiders attacking you. Spiders won't go anywhere near water, and so they certainly won't attack you as a group when you're standing in water. You can continue to attack them. They're going to stand on the edge. You just keep on bashing them. Okay? Did anyone come up with any other strategies? Eric?
Controllers versus the guy in strands.
Sorry?
Controllers versus the guy in strands. First level wizard.
Yeah, there was a wizard, but he had magic missile. They're not area effect. They just have, their first level. Okay.
They're control.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes. Okay, it's a big stone bridge. Their first level. Okay, they're not going to take out a bridge. Yes. Sorry? Teleportation spell. Their first level. Unfortunately, they don't have a teleportation spell. Okay. I'm sure if I gave you time, we don't have more time now. I'm sure if I gave you time, you'd come up with some other strategies. But good that you're thinking about these strategies. As I said, my party didn't think about it at all. They split the party. They decided to attack the great big monster at the, before, one of them on his own. He died. Yeah. Only one member of the party survived and ran away. That was interesting. Anyway, but I think that's a great example of an encounter which actually gets them thinking strategically. And what I tear my hair out, actually, when I watch the online streamers, like Critical Role, those of you who know it, is that they can't strategize and they don't think to strategize. And their DM is a little bit too generous with them. Personally, I like to get my players to think. DMs love to see you innovating, to coming up with ideas. We love seeing that, and it's great if you can. And advice that we always say to new DMs is don't say no. Well, think twice before you say no. I know I said no to a couple of people. Yeah, you can't destroy the bridge with just what you've got. You can't do a teleport spell because you haven't got one. But think twice before you say no. Okay?
Seduce the spiders.
Sorry?
Seduce the spiders.
I'm going to say no. Unless you can speak to the spiders. If you could speak to the spiders, I'll think about it. Okay? Right. So, I'm going to move on to intellectual curiosity. Now, this is where I'm going to ask, and I'm going to get into trouble if there are any university academic staff in here. Okay, that's good. Okay, so what I want you to do is put up your hand if you're a student. Okay? Keep your hand up if you're taking exams sometime this year or you've taken exams this year. Keep your hand up if you genuinely think that taking exams will make you better prepared for your job. No one thinks that. We force students to take exams, but no one in this room of very bright people seems to think that taking exams will make them better prepared for their jobs. Here's an interesting question. Put your hand up if you think taking exams makes you more passionate, more interested, or in some way read and want to learn more about their subject. Ooh, one or two. Okay. But not many. Okay. So as I said, I've been teaching for 20 years. In London, I was in a school for 10 years, and during that time, I saw literally hundreds of students coming in at year 7, which is 11-year-olds. And they come in so bright and enthusiastic and with so much energy and curiosity. They never stop asking questions. And they love their subjects. And this was a good school. I could always guarantee that at any level, I could find one teacher of each of the students that would be someone they considered to be inspiring, or someone who interested them in their subject. This was a great school. But over the next few years, from 11 to 15, I saw that spark of enthusiasm and intellectual curiosity dying. Some of them rekindled it when they were starting to think about universities in the sixth form. But over the next few years, for the most of them, the vast majority of them, I saw that intellectual curiosity dying. And that really saddens me. And there's a couple of reasons I think there are for that. One of them is that when we get taught a lot of methodology. We get taught the how to do it, not the reasons why. Because we're forced to for exams. We've got to get these students to get exam results. And that's the problem with exams. And secondly, because of exams. Now, the best way to, who knows the best way to prepare for exams? Anyone know? Sorry? So, two things, practice and doing tests. So you do lots of tests, and then you will get better to prepare for exams, and you do lots of practice past papers. Okay, surprised that university students haven't had that drilled into them by now. Okay? But none of that helps us to want to learn the subject more, to get passionate and interested in the subject. Now, before I get kicked out, and where this gets back to the academic staff here, I get kicked out and never invited back. As 20 years as a maths teacher, exams are the best way we have of assessing students. Unfortunately, exams are the best thing that we have for assessing students. I've seen the horrors of coursework. Next slide. Next slide. The horrors of coursework, the horrors of cheating, the horrors of the fact that it's subjective. Okay, who is this exam? Who is this person who is reading my coursework who doesn't have any real life experience? Well, maybe not. Judging my coursework. How is the person who jumps straight to the answer better than any worse than the person who does a methodical process through the answer? There's a specific marking grid for your coursework, and you have to tick these boxes. Generally, that's the case. Coursework is a nightmare, and it doesn't distinguish very well. Exams, unfortunately, are the best way for assessing students. I don't like it, but unfortunately it's the best we have. So how do we encourage intellectual curiosity? You see this child with great big eyes that you want to read. And I hope some of you still have that interest and want to read about your subjects and get passionate about your subjects. There's 4 things. Next slide, please. The first one is let them explore. Coursework may be terrible as an assessment, but it's a great way of learning. In D&D, it's one of the 3 pillars, is exploration. Now, I'd love to see the Finnish system of schooling. The Scandinavian schools generally finish about midday, and they have very little to no homework at all. The philosophy is behind that is that you are encouraging students to have the time to read and learn and get interested in stuff. There's a lot being written and researched right now about boredom, letting children be bored so that they can encourage creativity. D&D is all about encouraging creativity, innovation, and all of those things, and it encourages intellectual curiosity to go and read it and look about it yourself. Second thing, change their mindset. I love to ask my students who are learning maths to think about the problems as puzzles. I love to learn about, when I was a boy, learning about finding angles. I called it angle chasing. But you find that once people start playing D&D, they don't see it as work. As soon as you make something work, they get a mindset about it, I don't want to do it, or it's a chore. Instead, you get people who are learning about economics, learning about law and real history and how weapons work and the physics behind that, because they love it, because it helps with the game, because it's part of the game. Third point, keep showing them interesting stuff. That comes firstly from the second point and then moves into my fourth point, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time with it. Fourth point, surround them with passionate and intellectually curious people. So I've seen people who have gone from being mediocre mathematicians in 11, they're just average, to becoming some of the top mathematicians in a very academic school because they hang out with the mathematicians. And the mathematicians come together and they say, have you seen this problem? And this is the way you solve it. And this is a really interesting thing. And they hang out with some of the maths teachers. And the maths teachers, hopefully you've got good maths teachers who will say, this is really interesting. Okay? And this is a different way of thinking about this problem. And if you hang out with D&D people and you go onto the forums, you will hear them passionately talking about history, about kind of where this polearm came in at this certain time in history and it changed everything. And it all functioned like this, and it did away with these polearms. And how rivers flow from the mountains to the sea. I've seen a lot of terrible maps online. And how a +2 attack is equivalent to kind of getting advantage. So next slide, please. So these are the 3 articles I've written so far. A little bit of shameless self-promoting there. I'm polishing my next article, which is about whether maths actually helps you with D&D actually helps you with maths. There's a little secret. It does, but not how you think, hopefully. I'm most proud of my first article because I don't think there's anything else out there at the moment that D&D helps teach moral values. Okay. The second one is about real-world thinking and critical thinking. That's a lot of what I've talked about today, but it goes further than that. The third one is, you might think, oh, just about strength bows. This is my take on strength bows. Slide, please. It is my, but it actually came from a conversation. A student asked me about this idea, well, surely the strength with which you pull the bow back counts more than the dexterity. And I came up with this system just for those people who are interested in. But then it moved on to a conversation about Odysseus. Who's heard of Odysseus and knows the story of Odysseus? So if you know the story, at the end of his 20-year journey, he comes back, and the only way that he can win back his wife is because he's the only one strong enough to string his bow and shoot it through 12 arrow shafts. That shows that strength is very much part of bows. And then I talked about the longbow, the Welsh longbow, and how that was critical in the 100 Years' War. And there were great battles like Crecy and Agincourt, that's the most famous one, where the British longbow, which could fire 6 times faster than a crossbow, just wiped out the French. The French knights could not put up with the the Welsh, slip of the tongue, sorry, any Welsh people, the Welsh longbowmen. But the Welsh longbowmen trained from when they were children to have the strength to be able to pull the longbow. And I talked about swearing, how in England that is very rude. I apologize if you're offended by that, but that is very rude, sticking 2 fingers up. And that comes from the fact that the French used to cut off the fingers of the longbowmen. And so the longbowmen would stick up 2 fingers to the French before any battles to show them they still had fingers. And so it became a rude symbol. And so this student, just from one question, we went on to conversations that encapsulated history and swearing and Greek mythology and Greek literature and physics and even a little bit of maths. And it wasn't a chore for him. And this is intellectual curiosity. This is why D&D promotes intellectual curiosity. As I said, my next article is talking about learning maths. Please do kind of try a game of D&D or some other role-playing game. There's a lot going on here in KL. If you're down in Johor, come and visit my shop, Kindle Hobbies. This is Kindle Hobbies. We're down in Johor if you're ever down there. Do follow me on Facebook and Twitter. I post a lot of random stuff on Twitter, but on Facebook I try and keep it to educational stuff. And do feel free to contact me. Okay, thank you very much.